Okay, let's unpack this. Your 20s. It's often called the defining decade, and, well, for good reason. It's this period of massive transition, right? Where the trajectory you set now can seriously shape what happens down the road.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a cause and effect in real time for your life.
Exactly. A laboratory.
Yeah, it's where the rubber meets the road for a lot of those fundamental principles. And this deep dive, it's specifically for you, navigating this really pivotal time.
Right.
We've basically taken a stack of sources, articles, online wisdom, all sorts of perspectives, offering advice for young men in their 20s.
And our mission here is pretty simple. Just pull out the most important nuggets, the truly valuable insights from all this material.
Kind of a shortcut.
Yeah, exactly. A shortcut to being well-informed on what different people are saying matters most during this decade. And it covers a ton because, your 20s touch on everything.
Everything.
Your mindset, career, relationships, money, and just, taking care of yourself.
So let's jump right in. Maybe start with that foundation, the internal stuff. Mindset, self, purpose.
Sounds good. So that defining decade idea, it isn't just catchy, is it? One thing that really comes through in the sources is how fast this period can feel.
Oh, it flies by.
If you're not mindful, that transition from fewer responsibilities to facing what feels like the real world can just blur past.
Right. And the point is, the choices you make now, or maybe the choices you don't make, they might not have immediate, obvious consequences right away, but they build up. That compounding effect, good or bad, it really kicks off here. So just acknowledging the significance of this time, that's step one.
Something else that felt really powerful in the material was this idea of purpose. Yeah. It wasn't framed as some mystical thing you just stumble upon.
No, I'm not finding it.
Right. Instead, one source put it really directly. Purpose is decided.
And that's such a crucial reframing, isn't it? It shifts you from just passively waiting to actively creating. And the 20s, especially, before major commitments often kick in, mortgages, kids, whatever, they're highlighted as this prime time to actually do that deciding and then, experiment.
Yeah, what would you pursue if money wasn't the main driver?
Exactly. Exploring that question is seen as key to aligning with what you decide matters.
And the payoff. If you can get into that alignment, pursuing something you've consciously decided is your purpose, well, remarkable things can happen.
Passion is contagious, right? That's what they say. It's motivating.
Yeah. Another strong theme, and this came up again and again, was the absolute necessity of embracing challenges and mistakes.
Oh, definitely. The sources repeatedly emphasize that wisdom and character, they aren't just handed to you. They're forged, usually under pressure. Hardships are opportunities.
Yeah, viewing tough situations as a chance to grow, that's a total game changer. And mistakes, forget seeing them as final failures.
Right.
One source had a great phrase for it. Free data.
I like that. Free data.
It's just information you collect to improve your process next time. The goal is learning to fail forward.
Which is just so much more productive than trying to avoid mistakes entirely, right? Because that usually just means avoiding growth.
Exactly.
And speaking of investment, the sources were really clear. The most valuable investment you can make in your 20s isn't in, stuff, possessions.
Things can be lost or stolen.
But knowledge and experience, those are yours forever. They're assets that can never actually be taken away from you.
And investing in yourself isn't just about skills either. It's also about your perspective.
Yeah.
One source pointed out that wealth isn't just a bank account number.
It's a mindset.
Yeah. A different way of looking at the world that drives different, hopefully more effective actions.
And that shift in perspective, that can help combat another major pitfall the sources highlighted: comparison.
Oh, the comparison trap. Brutal.
Yeah, constantly measuring yourself against what others appear to have or be doing. It's described as basically the fastest route to feeling inadequate.
Because success is so personal, isn't it? The advice is really to focus on your own lane, set your own goals, track your own progress.
Right. And true self-worth, they suggest, it comes from appreciating what you have and who you are, not from external validation based on someone else's yardstick.
Which leads right into self-awareness. There was a really powerful piece of advice. Never lie to yourself. Tough, but necessary.
Be honest about your flaws, own your screw-ups, and just commit to striving to be a better version of yourself.
And authenticity kept coming up too. Being true to yourself is ultimately more important and, honestly, probably less exhausting.
Oh, for sure.
Than trying to be liked by absolutely everyone. Sometimes just saying no is all the answer you need. And that's okay.
Yeah. That's a complete sentence. Your unique perspective is valuable. Your 20s are the time to really find and lean into your voice.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about that internal foundation,
Right.
which is huge. But what about building your connections, your tribe? That seems incredibly important during this transition period too. It really does, especially in a world that can sometimes feel pretty fragmented. One idea the sources presented was almost like a life hack for accelerating personal change.
Okay.
Strategically surrounding yourself with people you aspire to be more like.
Ah, the environment thing. Your environment is stronger than willpower.
Exactly that. The thinking is that the people you spend the most time with, they can be a much stronger force than just pure willpower alone.
It can be tough, though. The sources suggest, letting go of relationships that might be holding you back
Which is hard.
and actively seeking out those who genuinely support your growth and, importantly, celebrate your wins.
This really reinforces the vital need for community, for belonging. Multiple sources specifically call this out as crucial for men, actually.
Yeah, isolation and loneliness, there's significant challenges. So nurturing existing friendships, family ties, that's framed as basically non-negotiable.
And building those deeper connections, it isn't always easy. The material noted that, broad superficial popularity might feel good for a minute,
That feels good.
but it doesn't really fulfill those essential emotional needs that come from having a few truly deep, trusting bonds.
Related to that, the sources made an interesting distinction. They said it's okay to be alone, but maybe not okay to feel lonely.
Ah, right, the difference.
Your 20s can be a great time to intentionally spend time by yourself, figuring out your identity, your values, learning to actually be good company for yourself.
Right, that's different from feeling lonely out of a sense of lack or isolation. It's about building that self-esteem that doesn't just depend on external validation.
Okay, so on the topic of romantic relationships, the advice was varied, and in some cases, pretty blunt.
Huh. Yeah, I noticed that too. The consistent theme seemed to be maintaining a healthy perspective.
Yeah,
Avoiding putting a partner on some kind of pedestal.
definitely. Some of the advice ranged from really practical stuff like use condoms until you're actually ready for kids.
Yeah, pretty direct.
To things like really observing a potential long-term partner's family dynamics for clues about future compatibility.
That's interesting. Trusting your intuition in relationships also came up repeatedly.
And one perspective explicitly suggested being active in seeking a loyal partner in your 20s, noting that, the dating pool can change as you get older.
Fair point. It's also acknowledged, though, that some relationships, even close friendships or family, they may not be permanent. And accepting that is just part of the journey.
True. But with the people who do matter, the ones who are positive forces in your life, being intentional about maintaining those strong, genuine connections is crucial. It often gets harder to form those deep, new friendships later in life.
Yeah, you have to make the effort.
And underpinning all of these relationships, communication.
Absolutely key.
Learning to communicate effectively, verbally in writing and critically. As an active listener, that's highlighted as just a fundamental skill for navigating all sorts of interpersonal situations and building those strong bonds.
Okay, so we've talked about building yourself up, building your relationships. What about building that foundation for the future? Specifically, your work and your money. How did the sources suggest approaching those big areas?
Yeah, this section had a lot of different takes, which is interesting in itself. One piece of career advice really challenged the traditional approach.
Oh yeah? How so?
Instead of starting by just picking a specific job title, they suggested you first think really hard about the life you actually want to live.
Define your personal North Star, essentially.
Exactly. Define that first. And then you figure out what kind of work can serve as the vehicle to get you to that life.
Considering things like where you want to live, or maybe the flexibility you might need down the road to support a family.
Precisely. It's about using your career as a tool for your broader life goals. And importantly, recognizing that your interests and aspirations might change. You'll probably need to adapt along the way.
The question of traditional education came up too, didn't it?
It did. One perspective was that while, sure, formal degrees are necessary for some fields, doctor, lawyer, whatever, you don't necessarily have to go the traditional university route for every career path these days.
Especially with so many online resources available.
Right. The argument is that ultimately people pay for results and expertise, not just pieces of paper. So the focus should be on acquiring the knowledge and skills that deliver those results, whether that comes from a classroom or, somewhere else entirely.
That connects to the advice about not staying in a job you hate. Life's definitely too short for that. Well, the sources offered a bit of tension here, I thought.
How so?
Well, some implied you should chase work you're passionate about, even if the initial pay is lower.
Right, follow your passion.
While others argued that maybe prioritizing a job that pays well and offers stability might be the more practical approach.
Giving you the financial freedom and time to pursue passions outside of work.
Exactly. It highlights that ongoing debate, doesn't it? Passion versus stability and financial freedom.
Definitely. But regardless of that specific debate, working hard and networking in your early 20s, that came through consistently. Essential groundwork that will make your 30s and 40s significantly easier.
Yeah, that networking piece described as the power of the who and the what you know was seen as hugely valuable.
And learning to negotiate for yourself, asking for what you want, was also advised. Plus, there was a pointed suggestion to avoid excessive loyalty to just one company.
Right. Sometimes moving on is the most direct way to get a significant pay bump and actually advance your career. Loyalty doesn't always pay the bills.
Sad, but often true. Taking calculated risks was another recurring theme, particularly in the career realm.
Because your 20s, with generally fewer dependents or big obligations, are seen as this prime window to step outside your comfort zone.
Right. That could mean taking a seemingly crappy job if it's truly a foot in the door to an industry you're genuinely excited about. Get started somewhere.
Okay, so moving from career to finance. Establishing solid financial habits in your 20s was presented as basically non-negotiable, like table stakes.
Absolutely. This means creating a realistic budget, truly understanding the difference between your needs and your wants.
Which can be harder than it sounds.
Oh, yeah. And then, crucially, living below your means. Actively resisting that urge, that lifestyle inflation, every single time your salary ticks up.
Yeah, avoiding the golden handcuffs early on.
Starting to save early was key, too. Building an emergency fund, covering 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in a high-yield savings account was highlighted as a critical first step for security.
Get that safety net in place. And managing credit wisely, that was big, too.
Huge. Paying bills on time, keeping credit card balances low, only borrowing for essential things. This builds a good credit history, which, let's face it, you're going to need for bigger goals later on. Mortgages, car loans.
All right. But if there was one single financial superpower highlighted across the sources, it was definitely the importance of investing early.
Yes, compound interest. It's basically earning money on your initial investment and then earning money on that earned money.
It's magic almost.
It really is. Starting in your 20s gives your money the maximum amount of time for that snowball effect to build significant wealth over decades. It's incredible.
Contributing to retirement accounts like a 401k or a Roth IRA was strongly recommended, especially taking full advantage of any employer match.
That's free money. Always take the free money.
Always. Index funds were often mentioned too as a smart, low-cost starting point for investing. Easy way to get diversified.
And it's worth noting, the material wasn't just focused on traditional white-collar paths. Some sources really pointed out that skilled trades can be an incredibly valuable and well-paid career.
Sometimes more so than certain four-year degrees, yeah.
Definitely. And starting your own business was also presented as a valid and potentially very lucrative option to consider.
Good point. One final critical piece of advice in this area, though. If you find yourself in a truly toxic work environment, leave.
Yeah.
As soon as you possibly can. Don't fall into that sunk cost fallacy, thinking just because you put time in, you have to stay.
Right, cutting your losses. It's almost always better for your well-being and your long-term career to just move on. Don't let it grind you down.
That feels like incredibly important practical advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears one last time. Let's talk about something fundamental to being able to do all this other stuff. Taking care of your physical health. Building strong habits. Honing your vessel, as the outline nicely put it.
Yeah, this was consistently framed as just a foundational investment in yourself. Your body is, quite literally, the vehicle for your life, right?
Too much without it.
Exactly. So prioritizing healthy eating, consistent exercise, and getting adequate sleep, That empowers pretty much everything else you want to do.
Exercise especially came up again and again, non-negotiable. Consistency is the key they kept hitting on.
It builds physical strength, sure, but also that mental resilience, especially on those days when you really don't feel like doing it.
Those are the most important days sometimes.
Totally. The advice was basically find something you enjoy, or at least tolerate, to make it sustainable. Integrate it into your routine. Understand that the initial difficulty is just part of building the habit.
And for actual muscle growth, progressive overload, making those small, consistent increases over time, was highlighted as a really powerful strategy.
And nutrition matters just as much. The sources drew a clear distinction between like eating clean for performance and body composition versus something like dirty bulking, which might add weight, but often leaves you feeling sluggish and maybe less disciplined overall.
Quality food matters. Focusing on sufficient protein, good carbs, healthy fats, limiting the junk. It was emphasized as fuel that actually leads to better gains and just better well-being.
And sleep. Sleep wasn't seen as laziness at all. It was framed as strategic recovery.
Yeah, that's where the growth happens.
Exactly. This is where your body actually repairs and builds muscle. Getting quality sleep is essential for physical repair, hormone regulation, mental clarity. Skipping it, the sources argued, significantly undermines all your training efforts. You're just wasting your time in the gym if you don't recover.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
In the gym itself, mastering your form was prioritized over just lifting the heaviest weight possible, what some call ego lifting.
Yeah, leave the ego at the door. Poor form is ineffective. It doesn't properly target the muscles you think you're working, and it drastically increases your risk of injury.
Which can set you back for weeks or months. And conversely, the sources also warned against overtraining. More isn't always better.
Definitely not. Pushing too hard without sufficient rest just leads to delayed recovery, burnout, sore joints, weaker lifts. Training smart, with structured splits and planned rest days, is vital for sustainable progress.
An often overlooked piece of the puzzle that got mentioned was mobility training.
Yeah, preventative maintenance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Framed as preventative maintenance for your joints. Reduces injury risk, can actually improve your lifting technique, speeds up recovery.
And perhaps most importantly, ensures you can stay active and hopefully pain-free well into your later years.
Yeah, future-proofing your body. Even simple daily routines can make a huge difference there.
And while having a training structure is good, the sources also noted the importance of strategic adaptation, switching up your routine every few months, maybe around the 12-week mark.
Keeps things fresh, avoids plateaus.
Exactly. Keeps you engaged and helps break through those sticking points.
Beyond the gym and the diet, some really practical, almost basic daily habits came up too.
Like what?
Learning to cook simple, healthy meals and cleaning up after yourself. Just essential life skills for self-sufficiency, really.
Basic adulting, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Making your bed, maintaining personal hygiene, like shaving. Some sources also added practices like flossing, trying cold showers, meditation, and consciously practicing positive thinking to build that mental resilience.
Wow. It really does cover the full spectrum, doesn't it? From building that internal strength and purpose, navigating relationships, securing your financial future, and quite literally taking care of the physical machine that lets you do all of it.
It's a truly comprehensive deep dive, looking at the many areas young men are advised to focus on during this critical decade. Pulled insights from a whole wide array of perspectives. Hopefully this gives you, the listener, a clearer map for navigating your own 20s.
Absolutely. And as you think about applying these ideas, here's a final thought from one of the sources to leave you with. Something to consider as you build your career. If you can't be replaced, you can't be promoted.
Ooh, interesting. Food for thought.